Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to join you today at the Area School of Government on the historic occasion, the commemorations of the 20th anniversary of the Aceh Peace Agreement. I wish to begin by expressing my deep gratitude to President Tetsuo Watanabe, Dean Nobuhiro Aizawa, and all the members of AREA for your kind invitations and for the opportunity to share my reflections with such a distinguished audience. I am pleased and happy because together with us, we have so many prominent figures. They had been playing very significant roles in the long process, road to peace in Aceh. I recognize Dr. Hasan Wirayuda, my good friend, my inner team in solving problems in Aceh, General Indiartono Sutarto, former commander of the TNI, Ambassador Puja is also here, Air Force General Joko Suyanto was also part of the solution, and I also recognize General Nimpat Tonglek from Thailand as a peacekeeper during the journey seeking peace in Aceh. I also commend AREA for your visions to connect this commemoration with the broader missions of cultivating future leaders, leaders who understand the value of peace, dialogue, and regional cooperations. Allow me also to thank all my friends, colleagues, and partners from Indonesia and abroad who have been part of this journey. The Aceh Peace Agreement, signed on 15th of August 2005 in Helsinki, was not the achievement of one individual. It was the collective work of countless people in government, in Aceh, in the National Armed Force and Police, in civil society, and in the international community, who believe that after decades of conflict, peace was possible. I must also note that this commemoration is deeply personal to me. For me, Aceh was never just another province in the West Archipelago. It was a place I had come to know closely long before I became president. Through my visits, my role in government, and my engagement with its leaders and people, I understood the pain of its conflict and the urgency of finding a political solution, peaceful solution. That sense of responsibility stayed with me and guided my leadership when the opportunity to make peace finally arrived. And today, I stand before you not only to celebrate a milestone in our history, but also to reflect honestly on the long road we traveled to reach that point. The lesson we learned along the way and the challenges that remain for Aceh and for peace-building efforts around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, 20 years ago today, we were blessed to witness a new milestone in our nation's history, the end of the armed conflict in Aceh. For decades, Indonesia had struggled without success to silence the guns and heal the deep wounds in that province. On that historic day, we finally succeeded. Alhamdulillah. It is only right that 20 years later, we gather here to remember, to commemorate, and to give thanks for the peace that was achieved, for the lives that were spared, and for the opportunity given to the people of Aceh to rebuild their lands, their communities, and their dreams. For me, this is far more than a historical commemoration. I speak to you not only as the President of Indonesia when the Helsinki Agreement was signed, but also as someone who was deeply engaged in the long road that led to that moment. That road was filled with challenges, tests of leadership, and at times, painful setbacks. And I must be honest with history. The reform movement in Indonesia after 1998 created a new political and moral climate, encouraging our leaders to finally end the conflict in Aceh, a conflict that had taken such a heavy toll on the lives and unity of our people. From the start, my conviction was clear that the conflict in Aceh could not and should not be solved through military means alone. While security measures were sometimes unavoidable, they could never address the root causes of the conflict. What Aceh needed was a comprehensive political settlement built on justice, mutual respect, and constitutional integrity. My experience in handling security and political affairs before becoming president convinced me that peace would only come if we engage in sincere dialogue and found common ground that both sides could accept. I do not stand here as a distant observer, but as a participant in that journey. On this occasion, I wish to share with you the essence of what I call the road to peace in Aceh. The road to peace in Aceh was neither straight nor easy. It wound through moments of fragile hope and lingering doubt, through guarded encounters and bold choices, through times when peace felt within grasp and times when it seemed to slip away. It is this road, with all its trial, turning points, and hard-won breakthrough, that I now wish to share with you. Ladies and gentlemen, when we speak of the Aceh peace process, it is tempting to focus only on the moment in Helsinki, the signing of the peace agreement on the 15th of August 2005. But history is rarely that simple. The Helsinki Agreement was not an isolated event. It was the culmination of a long, often difficult journey that stretched back many years. Through multiple presidencies, through initiatives that succeeded partially, and those that failed entirely, and through countless efforts to bridge the divide between Jakarta and Aceh. The first chapter of this journey began after the fall of the New Order, when the reform era opened new political space for dialogue. Under President Habibie, the humanitarian pause was introduced. This was not yet a peace settlement, not yet, but it was an important first step. It was an acknowledgement by both sides that even in conflict, humanitarian needs must be addressed, and that dialogue was possible. The next stage came under President Abdurrahman Wahid. There was renewed energy to find a peaceful solution, with discussion expanded beyond humanitarian matters to political arrangement. By that time, I was serving as coordinating minister for political and security affairs, and I found myself directly at the forefront of this mission, together with Minister Hasan Wirayuda and General Indriartono Sutarto. Yet the road remained steep. Deep mistrust accumulated over a decade meant that every proposal forced resistance, both in Jakarta and in Aceh. Under President Megawati, effort continued. Again, in my capacity as coordinating minister for political and security affairs, I made more than 1,000 visits to districts and cities across Aceh, meeting ulama or religious leaders, community leaders, local officials, and ordinary citizens to understand their hopes, grievances, and ideas for peace. I also worked to open direct, discreet line of communications with the leadership of the Free Aceh Movement, or GAM. It was during this time that the Geneva Agreement was reached. For a brief moment, there was an optimism that we had found a path forward. But like the humanitarian pause before, the Geneva Agreement struggled in its implementation. Compliance was weak on both sides, and before long, the agreement collapsed. For me, as the government point man on the issue, this felt like an unfinished mission, a historical debt that I hope one day to repay. In 2004, the Indonesian people entrusted me with the presidency. I had campaigned openly on a promise that if elected, I would make ending the Aceh conflict a priority, peacefully, fairly, and with dignity. I also promised to preserve Aceh as an integral part of the Republic of Indonesia. That promise became one of my first call to action. Only 1 month after inauguration, I visited Banda Aceh in November 2004. I publicly invited all sides to sit down and find a political solution. The response was cautious. Some in GAM remained skeptical, but many welcomed the sentiment. I began to earn greater trust from GAM, and trust that, though still fragile, opened the door to deeper dialogue and the real possibility of peace. Then, 1 month later, disaster struck. The Aceh tsunami of the 26th of December 2004, Aceh was devastated beyond imagination. In the midst of that tragedy, I repeated my call for peace. This time, the response was different, more positive. The sheer scale of the catastrophe created new urgency and a sad awareness that rebuilding Aceh could not be done while guns were still firing. With that shift in mindset, we began preparing for formal negotiation, and everybody knows the process was never easy. There were 5 rounds of talks in Helsinki, each testing the patience and resolve of both delegations. I was directly in charge of the overall directions of this negotiation. My job was to ensure that every discussion stayed within the boundaries of the Constitution, that our sovereignty remained intact, and that every agreement could be implemented without creating political and legal instability. I set the parameter for the delegation, gave the final approval for strategic position, and made the key decision when talk reached critical juncture. When Martti Ahtisaari, former president of Finland and head of the Crisis Management Initiative, CMI, was approached to serve as a mediator in Aceh peace process, he asked to meet me directly to hear from the highest authority what Indonesia truly wanted. His questions were brief and clear. Did I genuinely want him to mediate? And what was my vision as President of Indonesia? My answer were equally direct. Yes, I want you to be a mediator. And I envisioned at the end of the conflict with Aceh, I will grant it wide-ranging autonomy status, but no independence. From that meeting, Martti and the CMI began their work in earnest. Some issues were especially sensitive. The questions of local political parties had to be resolved in a way that allowed for Aceh's unique status without setting problematic precedent for other provinces. The idea of self-government had to be carefully defined so that it aligned with Indonesia's existing framework for special autonomy. The matter of symbols, such as a flag, had to be handled firmly, since the conflict meant there should be no return to separatist insignia. In 2009, there were political discussions or even questions about who among us deserved the greatest credit for bringing peace to Aceh. Myself as a president, or Vice President Yusuf Kalla, or Martti Ahtisaari in his role as mediator. I always regarded such a question as unnecessary, because in my view, this was not the achievement, it was not the achievement of one person, but the collective work of many. I remain deeply grateful to Vice President Yusuf Kalla for his important role, and to President Martti Ahtisaari for his effective mediation. Of course, there was no formal division of labor in the Constitution regarding the relation between President and Vice President. It is clear that the Vice President assists the President in all matters of governance, including in the Aceh peace process. In this case, I was the principal leader and decision maker, while Vice President Yusuf Kalla played a supporting role, particularly in maintaining direct communication with the negotiation team in Helsinki. President Martti Ahtisaari, as a mediator, facilitated the process with skill and impartiality, helping to bridge differences and keep dialogue on track. Sometimes it was not easy. Professor Umam knows that. Their engagement were important, but the final responsibility and authority rested with me as president. This distinction is not about diminishing anyone's contribution, but about regarding history as it truly happened. In truth, it was not a matter who did more, but rather how we work as a team with complementary roles that were both essential for success. The political authority had to come from the president, but the intensive engagement and bridge building by vice president and mediator were equally critical. All players were playing really significant roles. I have to admit and I have to recognize it. In fact, many actors were instrumental. The positive roles of the religious and community leaders in Aceh, I have to recognize it. The GAM leadership who were willing to negotiate. The TNI and Polri who supported the process. The parliament and regional government who gave their backing. And our international partner who provided facilitation. Beyond the negotiation table, I should say beyond yes, there was another equally important front, building and maintaining trust. I needed the full support of my government, my ministers, the armed forces, the police, and our intelligence services. Decades of conflict had shaped deep institutional habits and perception. Convincing the TNI, for example, that a political settlement could succeed required honest dialogue and a shared commitment to the same goal. I was lucky to have General Indratono Sutarto, who was working real hard with me to convince my colleague general that military operation is not an end. The end is conflict in Aceh can be terminated. Military operation is only means to end. When military operation could not succeed, why don't we think outside the box? Think another thing. Probably political solution is needed. And the history proves that our choice is right. I also reached out to Parliament, to MPR, to DPR deputy, ensuring they understood and backed the process. Alhamdulillah, the Parliament backed our effort. Internationally, I spoke with friends in the United Nations and in Europe to secure understanding and moral support. I went to Sweden. I went to Paris with Pak Indratono Sutarto to have a talk. I talked to Kofi Annan, my good friend, because when I was in Bosnia, Kofi Annan was the head of the Masons of the United Nations. This broad coalition was essential. Peace could not be the work of the executive branch alone. Finally, on 15 August 2005, the agreement was signed. I remember clearly speaking that day at the presidential palace in Jakarta, welcoming the agreement, but also warning to everybody that the hard work was not over. Peace on paper is one thing. Peace in hearts and minds and daily life is another. The period immediately after Helsinki was, in my view, the most fragile. Yes, I have to say the most fragile one. Trust between former adversaries had to be built from scratch, from the beginning. Implementation of the agreement had to be carefully managed through legislation and administrative changes. I often told all commanders and leaders in Aceh, to Pangdam di Aceh, to Governor of Aceh, to Kapolda in Aceh, the military, the police, and the governor, stand together. Do not let suspicion divide you. Show your leadership, responsibility, and commitment. If you all, governor, military commander, and police chief, do that, half of our problems will already be solved. I remember, because I know, after signing the agreement, sometime we were facing big challenge to save the agreement. The same message went to my ministers in Jakarta. We needed one voice, one understanding, one determination to protect this peace, to safeguard this peace. Over time, despite inevitable difficulties, the agreement endured. Laws were passed to give it a firm legal foundation. Former combatants laid down their arms and embraced civilian life. And the people of Aceh began to rediscover something they had been denied for far too long: the simple, precious rhythm of living in peace. Children walked to school without fear. Farmers returned to their field. Families gathered at night, knowing that tomorrow would come without the sound of gunfire. That is the journey, the road to peace in Aceh, as I live it. It is not the story of one man or one administration, but of many hands, many hearts, and many minds, working often quietly and without recognition to turn long and bitter conflict into a lasting peace. It is a story of hope reclaimed, of trust rebuilt, and of a people who choose the promise of better tomorrow over the pain of the past. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, from the long journey to peace in Aceh, there are lessons that I believe are not only relevant to Indonesia, but also for other societies seeking to end protracted conflict. Some of these lessons are universal, applicable in many contexts, while others are deeply rooted in Indonesia's own political and cultural realities. The first lesson is that peace must be owned by the parties in conflict. Outsiders can facilitate, mediate, or provide good offices, but the will to end a war has to come from within. In Aceh case, both the government of Indonesia and the Free Aceh movement reached a point where continuing the war brought only losses. And the possibility of peace began to look like the only sensible path, only possible solution to have. This convergence of will was the single most important factor. The second lesson is that leadership matters. Without leadership willing to take risks, peace will remain out of reach. I had to make a decision that carried political costs and security risks. There are many pros and cons here in Jakarta and all over Indonesia. But the show must go on because I do believe this is the only way to end the conflict. The gun leaders had to do the same. I'm thankful to them. There were moments when holding back for political safety would have been easy, but it would also have been fatal for the process. This is why the president's direct involvement was not a ceremonial. It was the center of gravity for the entire effort. I was the most responsible man in Indonesia during the peace process. Succeed or fail. The third lesson is the importance of clear parameters. From the start, I set non-negotiable principle for our side. Aceh would remain within the United States of Indonesia. Any autonomy arrangement had to be consistent with the Constitution, and the peace process must not weaken national sovereignty. Within those parameters, there was a space for creativity and flexibility. These boundaries help maintain national unity while allowing genuine concession that address Aceh aspiration. The fourth lesson is that building trust is as important as signing agreement. In the years before Helsinki, mistrust was so deep that even small gestures were seen through the lens of suspicion. This is why every meeting, every round of talks, and every public statement had to be carefully managed to avoid setbacks. Trust building also had to happen within the government-owned institution, between civilian leadership and the armed forces, between the executive and the parliament, and between the central government and Aceh province authorities. Fate timing can change everything. Without the window opened by the 2004 tsunami, it is hard to imagine how quickly both sides would have moved toward an agreement. Tragedy created urgency. Urgency created flexibility. Flexibility created innovative action. While no one would ever wish for such a disaster, its impact on physical psychology cannot be denied. I still remember first, second, third week after Aceh was attacked by big disaster, tsunami. I could see the eyes, probably with the hearts, on both Indonesian military and GAM fighters. So, for me, this is a great opportunity that I have to follow with stronger initiative for continuing a talk and negotiation. Finally, implementation is the real test. Signing the Helsinki MOU was the beginning, not the end. Laws had to be passed, new institutions had to be created, former combatants had to be reintegrated, and communities had to be rebuilt. This is where the role of local leadership became critical. I consistently reminded Aceh leaders that peace would only last if they govern well, avoided corruption, and put the people's welfare first. Learning from the shortcoming of the Geneva Agreement, I was determined to ensure that Helsinki Agreement would not meet the same fate. As president, with the authority and responsibility entrusted to me, I worked relentlessly to safeguard its full implementation so that the promise of peace be believed and felt by every stakeholder. These lessons are not unique to Aceh. They apply to any society facing armed conflict, whether in Southeast Asia, Africa, the Middle East, or elsewhere. They remind us that peace is not an event. It is a process requiring leadership, patience, and the willingness to keep working even after the headlines fade. Need a compromise, take and give, willing to move one step back for each side. When we signed the Helsinki Agreement in 2005, there was great hope that peace would open the door to rapid progress, that Aceh would recover quickly, grow economically, and offer a better life for its people. Looking back after 20 years, I must speak with honesty. While the absence of armed conflict is a major achievement, many of the dreams we had for Aceh development have yet to be fully realized. The economic growth has yet to reach its full potential. There is room to grow, and there is still work to be done to ensure social and infrastructure improvement fully meet the people's aspiration. The gap between what was envisioned and what has been achieved reminds us of the journey ahead. Yes, the people enjoy security and freedom from fear. Yes, political stability has been maintained. And while progress in the economy, social development, and public services has been varied, this achievement from a strong foundation on which we can build even greater progress in 10 years to come. Why is this so? The answer cannot be found in a single cause. The Helsinki Agreement itself was never meant to be a magic formula. It is not a magic formula that would automatically bring prosperity soon in Aceh. It was, first and foremost, a political statement to end armed conflict, to create a framework for governance, and to allow Aceh the peace and stability it needed to move forward. Development, however, requires more. Sound policies, effective governance, investment in human capital, and the active participation of communities. I have to be candid here. Some of the aspirations we set in 2005 have yet to be fully realized. We understand that the economic journey after the peace agreement faced natural complexities and evolving priorities. While progress has been gradual in diversifying the economy and strengthening public services, these experiences have given us valuable lessons. This is my belief. It's time for a thorough and honest evaluation. Now, Jakarta and Banda Aceh must sit together with openness and mutual respect to examine the past 2 decades. What has worked? What has fallen short? What mistakes have been made? And most importantly, what must be done differently in the years ahead? Such an evaluation must avoid a trap of mutual blame. The spirit of Helsinki was cooperation, not confrontation. We must rekindle that spirit, the willingness to listen, to compromise, and to focus on solution rather than grievances. Another important point is that younger generation in Aceh, who were children or not yet born in 2005, must feel that peace has delivered real opportunities for them. If they see stagnation, lack of job, or inequality, the narrative that peace brings prosperity will lose its power. That is why education, vocational training, entrepreneurship, and innovation are essential priorities moving forward. The people of Aceh deserve the dividend of peace. They deserve education, healthcare, job, infrastructure, and the chance to build a future free from fear and poverty. The responsibility to deliver this is shared. It lies with the local government, with the national government, with civil societies, and with the private sector. If the foundation of good governance and equitable development are neglected, the frustration that one full conflict can resurface in new ways. Conversely, if peace is reinforced by justice, opportunity, and inclusiveness, it can become unshakable. As we look ahead, let us remember, the signing of the Helsinki Agreement was not the end of the story. It was the start of a new chapter. The question now is how we will write the next chapters. Whether they will tell a story of sustained progress or one of missed opportunities. The choice and the responsibility is ours. We have just looked back on the last 20 years, 2 decades marked by the hard work of turning war into peace. That journey has laid a solid foundation, yet it is not the final destination. The next 20 years will demand no less of us to ensure that the peace we have secured truly blossom into lasting prosperity. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, 2 decades ago, the guns in Aceh fell silent. That silence was not empty. It was filled with the laughter of children playing in schoolyard, once surrounded by fear, with a call to prayer echoing over villages no longer divided by checkpoints, with the sound of fishermen returning to the sea without worry of being caught in the crossfire. I remember visiting Aceh in those first months of the peace agreement. I saw mothers in the market smiling again, selling their goods without glancing over their shoulder. I saw former combatants shaking hands with soldiers, sharing meal under the same roof. I saw young couples daring to plan to their wedding, confident that their children would grow up in a world where conflict was only a story from the past. These are the moments that remind us why peace matters. They are the real dividend of dialogue and the true rewards of perseverance. And they are what give meaning to all of the effort, the negotiators, the compromises, the sleepless night that brought us to Helsinki and beyond. But I also knew, even in those joyful movements, that peace is never guaranteed. Many peace agreements in other parts of the world have failed within few years, collapsed within few years, because leaders forgot that the real work begins after the signing of the agreement. In Aceh, the first 5 years after Helsinki were crucial, and we managed to keep the momentum, alhamdulillah. But sustaining it for 20 years to come requires continuous leadership, unity of purpose, and the courage to correct course when needed. I stand here today humbled by the fact that I had the privilege to be part of that journey. But I'm equally aware that success of Aceh peace was never the work of one man or two or one office. It was the work of many leaders in Jakarta and Aceh, commanders and soldiers, former combatants, community leaders, civil society, religious figures, and international friends who believed that peace was worth the effort. To all of them, I extend my deepest gratitude. To the next generation of leaders in Aceh and Indonesia, I say this: the Helsinki Agreement is not just a document to be archived. It is a living mandate to keep building a just, prosperous, and inclusive society. Do not let the sacrifice of the past be in vain. Protect the unity, respect diversity, and always choose dialogue over violence. And to Area, I thank you for ensuring that this story continues to be told not as a relic of the past, but as a living source of lesson for the present and the future. As we commemorate this 20th anniversary, let us take pride in what has been achieved, but also take responsibility for what remains unfinished. The work of peace is never truly done. It is a legacy we must guard, a trust we must honor, and a gift we must pass on to the next generation. Let me close my speech with words I often hold in my heart. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of justice, hope, and shared tomorrow. May the road that began in Aceh continue to inspire all of us in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia, and across the world to choose dialogue over violence, unity over division, and hope over despair. I thank you.